Good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, yeah, we will take a look at the dailies, but then it's also important to state that, there was some situation in Anambra yesterday. Yes, we know they're preparing for the governorship elections. They're holding campaigns, rallies, and it is time for that, actually. But the attacks that were carried out, well, good to see that some intervention, security agencies wading into all of that, because, I mean, it was going to be unacceptable that those kind of things happen and security agencies don't apprehend anyone or feign ignorance about any of those matters going on. So, yes, they'll need to ramp up activities rather, because that's why they're there in the first instance, to ensure that anyone or whosoever tries or attempts or is found wanting in those kind of scenarios are apprehended and brought to book, because the elections have got to hold. They can't afford to attack people who are having rallies, and so
well, you know,
it's really concerning.
For me, as you know, my advocacy would always be, it's about the people.
Yeah.
And how much of the concerns that the people have are being addressed. I think those things are very important. You listen to the conversation we had with Professor Utomi, as well as Professor Abbas yesterday, and when you listen to them, you just find out that it would seem like generally we're just ignoring the people in all of the dynamics. And what's funny, it's the people that make up the political parties. It's the people that are, fomenting some of these issues that we're having, and it is the people that are victims. In all fronts, it's the people. But what classes of the people? Those are the things that are very important now. Instruments of state are supposed to do some things, no doubt. But are the instruments of state instruments of state are being operated by the people of the state being Nigeria now. But if the subnationals are not getting due attention, there is an issue that we definitely have to confront. It only goes back to all of the issues that have been bandied around about restructuring, regionalism, and all those things. We shouldn't just play the ostrich, if I'm to use your popular term, Chamberlain. We shouldn't play the ostrich in these issues. We should really look at them and deal with them. Look, these things, I mean, we've heard it said so many times. People fomenting trouble, they are not ghosts.
As a matter of fact, it's clear what they want. They want to put fear into the people, ensure that they don't come out for campaigns, and by extension, elections don't hold. It's clear what they want.
So if these things are clear, and I remember Mr. President has said over and over again that he wants to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
The people who are on his side, because most politicians today would always pick and exonerate the president to a large extent. Do they think that the large extent that the president is in support of all of this trouble that is being fomented? I don't think so. And I don't think any well-meaning, reasonable Nigerian would want all of these things to continue. As we have known, the Southeast wasn't known for any such unrest.
It would be unacceptable for them not to fish those people
unacceptable.
out.
It is unacceptable.
A good thing they've changed the commissioner of police some time ago. So they should go after those people, whoever is involved,
and
whoever it is.
This period is very, very critical. It's an election month, literally, for Anambra State. And this is like a precursor to any other election. We've been talking about pre-election violence for so many years. We've been talking about electoral violence for so many years and for so long. And now it has begun again. When is this going to end?
And we the people have to find a way to volunteer information to those security agencies who would need it. I know people will say, well, look, that's why I say find a way. Even if you don't have to physically be there or something, you have to find a way to escalate those things. Then, such that they need, after all, there are bounties.
Then you also don't also forget that for that to happen anonymously, the state has to provide that avenue through which people can do that anonymously.
Well, since the governor has said there's a 20 million bounty on anyone who gives that information. So just volunteer that information. I assume that channel is being provided in the state. So
let's hope so.
They need to take advantage of that.
Most certainly.
And see what happens. All right, that's it. Let's flip and take a look at some of the dailies here today. We'll start with Vanguard newspaper. Yeah, see what they lead with. Electronic transmission of poll results. It's been a big one for a while. Yeah, even after that voting on the floor of the Senate and that of the House of Reps, the drama we saw. And then you see this, Senate in U-turn imposes direct primaries on parties. So, there you go. Senate bows to pressure, backpedals on electronic transmission of results, adopts direct primaries for parties. Ekweremadu hails Senate. NAS can't dictate to parties how to choose candidates. Weekend. It's a welcome development. INEC. APC using its NAS majority to manipulate constitution in its favor. CUPP. PDP chides Senate. APC over direct primaries. APC keeps mum. So there you go. All of that associated with that lead story here today is what we were going to take a look at as we progress today. So yeah, you need to just hang in there and see how that comes through here today. What do you make of this? Without regionalism, Nigeria's progress a mirage. I'm laughing.
The only reason he would say that would be because of the benefit of history. I mean, regionalism paid off for us in the First Republic, and not until the military intervention of '66. Regionalism was the way to go, and the traditional rulers were very powerful, and the regions had healthy competition among themselves. That saw to the development of so many
So
people.
are we supposed to go back to regionalism? What happens to nationalism?
Well, I think you have quoted that the Swiss model.
Oh. Yeah, if we look at those things, well, that's why this kind of things, we should be improving and progressing and not retrogressing or staying stagnant. As a matter of fact, in this kind of things, if you say stagnant, you're going backwards. Because everybody else is doing something to move forward.
We'll be moving
so
forward,
we need to do something to move forward. Not think that, yeah, if you're stagnant, you know, you maintain that. No, it doesn't work that way.
There are those who have also argued that, look, if we're going to go to use democracy the way we've been wanting to use it, we should domesticate it. The question is, how?
All right. Okay, there you go. Take a look at what's on the back page of Vanguard newspaper here today. Of course, it's sports. 2022 World Cup. Senegal first team through to Africa's playoffs. Whoa. Morocco 2022. Super Falcons commence campaign for England. And in the Premier League, injury nightmare for Man United. Varane ruled out against Leicester. Maguire already out. Who knows? Yeah, well, okay, Mr. and Mrs. All right. I'll take a look at it. But you know who's asking me to. Okay, one Mrs. is telling me, I searched your pockets and took the money I found in them. What's wrong in that? Mr. says, that's open grazing. Henceforth, all grazing routes in this house are no-go area. Oh boy. So, there you go. That's what I got this morning.
The Nigerian Tribune is next.
Oh, Mr. Pulling punches.
Oh, I mean, that's definitely. Well, it is open grazing. Come on. Come on. And that grazing route has not been gazetted.
Well, it was open, so, and inviting. You have to do it.
Nigerian Tribune, Senate bows to pressure, accepts electronic transmission of results. Bows to pressure. I mean, I've been questioning that term in my mind, but hey, that's what it is, right? Stories on page 5 of the paper this morning. Southwest governors envision Amotekun becoming state police. Guess who's saying that? Fayemi calls for short-term recruitment of NYSC members to increase security force.
What? Say what?
The story is on page 28 of the Nigerian Tribune.
Okay, we need to digest it.
Certainly.
Short-term recruitment of NYSC officials to...
How long will the short term be, and
what exactly would they be doing?
How much training are they going to get? Are they going to bear arms? So many questions, come from that.
But given it's for security purposes, are they supposed to go there without bearing arms?
What kind of arms are they
What
trained
kind of
to bear
functions do
arms?
they carry out?
Exactly.
Or are we supposed to remodel the entire scheme?
Or is this a JTF suggestion?
Whoa.
I'm asking questions. Come on.
Parents will definitely ask you more questions.
Oh, most certainly.
Don't send my word to where? Okay.
All right, right above the nameplate. Nigeria's trade costs too high to attract investments. Guess who's saying that? Okonjo Iweala, stories on page 6. Osinbajo did not call for Naira devaluation, says presidency. Stories on page 2. More of that you find. Okay, look at this one. Truckers lose 10 million Naira to extortion daily as illegal checkpoints sprout at, guess where? Lagos ports. Stories on page 8 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. 10 million Naira extortion daily. Multiply that by 30. And sports. Sime is deadly in the box, says Cannavaro. He can score 25 goals a season. Luca Tony says.
Oh, Luca Tony, fantastic. That's nice props to Sime from.
Big name, right? And that's the Nigerian Tribune today.
Well, I think Nigeria needs to now focus on if we can get fantastic defenders and goalkeepers step up. It's going to be a good team, though, because we usually play attacking football in Africa. A lot of teams just want to attack.
We weren't always like that, Chamberlain. We weren't always like that. Nigeria was Africa was the. Yeah. Let me speak for Nigeria. It was the toast of African soccer in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Going back to the past can be tricky. Take a look at
When did we lose it?
Next.
Come on, that's the question I'm asking.
I know, but they're also talking about election results on the front page here. Senate bows to pressure, empowers INEC to decide transmission mode, allows political parties to decide modalities for primaries. Whoa. Okay, I thought they already stipulated it. And then Atiku Ikorimadu commends Senate.
Well,
different strokes for
different folks. I mean, you read one of the headlines or sub-headlines that said that the River State governor is not particularly blown by the issue of the direct primaries.
Yeah, and then 6 feared dead as gunmen soldiers clash at APGA rally. ZLP carpet APGA APC over insecurity. Police arrest Kaduna Catholic priests of doctors. So always good to hear that. So yeah. And then you see IMF raises Nigeria's growth forecast to 2.6%. Board backs MD after data rigging claims review. So looks as if someone's in the clear right there today. So that's New Telegraph today.
Daily Trust. Despite bid disqualification, FG moves to award Intel's multi-billion naira boat service contract. Stories on page 5. And guess what's going on? BPP NPA kick as company demands 25-year tenure and 25% commission. What's all that about? You may want to take a closer look. Presidency pass buck. Ministry mum. Intel declines comments. All of that parked on the front page, and the story is on page 5. And take a look at this one, which story is on page 4. 1,153 civilians, 176 security personnel killed in 3 months. Who's saying that? You find that on page 4. Breakdown of killings in 3 months, July to September 2021. That's what you have in the graphic on the front page of the paper, and all of that you'll find right on the inside pages of the Daily Trust newspaper today.
Oh, The Guardian is a different perspective today. Fintechs shun stock exchange for $876.5 million funding overseas. Who wouldn't?
Indeed. Who wouldn't?
Oh dear. Exchange can only boast of 8 listed tech telecoms firms. Experts blame Naira devaluation, shortage of forex. Others, more venture capitalists needed to fund SMEs across sectors. So it just tells you we've got some job of work to do to ensure that we have a strong footing
Indeed.
for which they can be attracted to do some of these things. If not, we seem to always, at some point, forget that it's a global village. It's a global village. Businesses are contending with their counterparts across the world. However, whether we take that on board or not. So, there you go. Ataga's murder drama as defendant changes guilty plea at council's instance. Yeah, you might also want to see that. But at the bottom strip, Labour begins indefinite strike, paralyzes government activities in Cross River.
Here we go again.
How did they get that wrong? That's Vanguard. I beg your pardon, that's the Guardian today.
Daily Independent has this one. Senate gets kudos over U-turn on e-transmission of results. Attracts thumbs down on direct primaries for political parties. All of that packed on the front page, continues on the inside pages. And this one says, experts say Naira devaluation will push inflation to 25%. And the rider, I didn't advocate Naira devaluation. All of that you'll find on the inside pages this morning of the paper, and so many other issues that you definitely find interesting if you just look on the inside pages of the paper this morning.
Okay, well, News Direct, how about that? E-transmission of election results, Senate grants INEC sole power to determine mode. Okay, so you've seen that reflected in some of the other dailies here today. So there you go. That is it with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Just hang on, we'll be back in a moment.
The Electoral Act Amendment Bill is one of the most polarizing pieces of legislation in the Ninth Assembly. Clause 52, which refers to electronic transmission of results, split lawmakers in the Senate sharply along party lines to the extent that a division was called on the vote for the first time in the Ninth Assembly.
Say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
After the public vote on Clause 52, the Senate approved that INEC may consider electronic transmission of results, provided the national coverage is adjudged to be adequate and secure by the National Communications Commission, NCC, and approved by the National Assembly. This amendment caused uncertainty in the public space as to the intention of Parliament in promoting credible elections and the fate of electronic transmission of results in future elections.
In my name.
Fast forward to Tuesday's plenary session. The Senate is reversing its decision and is giving electoral umpire INEC the free rein to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections.
Voting at an election and transmission of results under this bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Commission.
Those in favor of Clause 52 as amended, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The Senate also re-amended Clause 43, 63 and 87. Clause 87 refers to the procedure for party primaries, which the previous amendment prescribes direct and indirect primaries. The latest amendment is prescribing direct primaries for political parties.
I hold the view, Mr. President, that it is more cheaper, less cumbersome to have indirect primary elections.
If this our democracy will be strengthened, if this our democracy will grow, and if we are going to be able to take it to anything close to global best practice standards, it is time for us to adopt direct mode of primaries.
Those in favor of the amendment to Clause 87, 4, say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
Briefing journalists after plenary, The Senate spokesperson throws more light on the re-amendment of the Electoral Act bill.
This would allow INEC, when they have the necessary wherewithal and competence, they don't need to come back for us to introduce electronic voting machine as part of the materials they will use for election.
The Senate's latest amendment of Section 52 to empower INEC to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections is sure to delight many Nigerians and those in the civic space who have been agitating for a reversal of the earlier decision. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Well, that's what we're going to focus on today, and we've got some gentlemen joining us in Abuja to weigh in and shed light on the subject matter. Honorable Yakubu Barde is a former minority whip in the House of Representatives. Just sitting beside him is Festus Okoye, National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education for INEC. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Nigerians.
Well, Honorable Barde, let me start with you. Much as they say, they reversed themselves, they bowed to pressure, but then did they really bow to pressure? Or they actually looked at how those actions could hurt them, given the fact that over time, members usually, the turnover is usually very high because, either people are not happy with them or they are the chief executives of their states usually determine what transpired. Is that some way, tucked in to the main reason why this happened?
Thank you, Chamberlain. I don't think they were influenced by any executive of their states, but I think more likely is the outcry of Nigerians who want credible election, credible transmission, and credible declaration of people's mandate. If you see what the civil rights society organization did, in which they really call on Nigerians and even the Senate to have a rethink on what they pass. You see, just like I listened to Senator Kabiru Gaya yesterday, he said they listened to the outcry of Nigerians. That's why they are representative of Nigerians. So I think that is foremost. You must listen to what your constituents are saying. And I'm happy that they did listen and reverse their decision. Secondly, also, if you look at the constitutionality of that clause, whereby INEC, which is enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria, will now have to take decision based on the authorization of NCC. That was their former stand. It's not a workable law or act or clause that they pass. So in all we do in lawmaking is you have to make sure that the workability of whatever law you are passing is sacrosanct. Because if you pass a law and it is not workable or is not in tandem with the Constitution, then it's all efforts in nullity. So for me, I think they did well, and I applaud them for that. Of course, we are going to sit with them in the Joint Reconciliation Committee to see how, at the end of the day, we want to bring us something that Nigerians, INEC, and the whole world will know that Nigeria is ready for democracy, because that is the important thing, that people mandate or people's view or people's vote should count. And we should make sure that we minimize everything that will cause their view or their vote to be truncated. So I think for me, it's most like listening to the cry of the people, look at the constitutionality of that clause they earlier passed.
So was it the cry of the people to determine how parties hold their primaries, or is it the political party members themselves this time?
Yeah, if you see what has happened, you know that PDP has kicked. For me, I think INEC
should do more of monitoring how parties conduct their primaries. And in the clause that was passed by the House of Representatives, we gave that mandate to the parties to determine whether direct or indirect. Now, you see, why I like that clause to be left the way it is, that is either direct or indirect, is this. I give you instances where there are security challenges. Now, if you go by indirect or direct, or if you go by direct primaries, and you are going to bring a lot of party faithfuls, card-carrying members, to vote in who should represent them, for the security challenges in some areas, I'm very sure it is not going to go well. But if you allow the parties, considering the circumstance they find themselves, for me, it's about credibility. If all the members of the party could sit down and say, look, this is the candidate we want, and they can elect such person either through direct or indirect primaries, I think that is more important. But for the Senate to say they shall do direct primaries, I have a reservation for that. And for me, it is more liberal and is more democratic if parties are allowed to choose either to do direct
but
or
if you
indirect,
say,
depending on the circumstances they find themselves in a particular area or state.
But if you say it's the cry of the people and the wish of the people, why kick?
Yeah, the issue here is this. If you talk about the parties, like I said, the PDP is already kicking that, look, the Senate should not impose direct primaries on the parties. That is what the PDP is kicking, and the governor of Rivers State, Wike, has stated it categorically, and I think another governor has said. And the PDP, if you ask me, for me, I'm a member of the PDP, and the voice of PDP is the voice of the people, at least some section of the people who believes in PDP.
All right, Mr. Okoye, if we go start from that particular perspective as well, I mean, point in terms of that amendment by the Senate Clause 87, where, the amended portion, which reads, a political party seeking to nominate candidates for elections under this act shall hold direct primaries for aspirants. So how is this a welcome development for INEC as well?
Well, the Independent National Electoral Commission is a constitutional body. We act and work in accordance with the law and the Constitution. We do not have lawmaking powers because Section 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has given the National Assembly power to make laws for the Federation of Nigeria and parts of the Federation. So as far as the Commission is concerned, whatever law is passed by the National Assembly, the Commission will look at it and look at where it fits into that particular framework. But talking specifically about Section 87, I think the fact must be underlined that the conduct of primaries is within the domestic realm of the various political parties. But the only thing Section 87 makes clear is that in conducting their party primaries, the various political parties must be democratic and must also conform to internal democratic principles and internal democratic norms within their own framework. I've looked at what has been passed by the Senate now, and then I've also looked at what has been passed by the House of Representatives. As of today, the whole issue is still incoherent because the conference committee has to meet and then agree on which one to go with. And thereafter, the president will assent to the bill or refuse assent. It is only then that it becomes law, and then the Independent National Electoral Commission will now come in. But the flip side of it is that when you have direct primaries, and then you say the commission must monitor all the direct primaries of the political parties. Now we have 18 political parties as of today. The implication is that if the political parties are organizing their primaries in every registration area or what you normally call wards, the commission must deploy to over 8,809 registration areas to go and monitor primaries of these political parties. And that is huge resources in terms of the personnel that will be deployed and also in terms of the cost involved. But the moment the law is passed, the Commission will not have any challenge in obeying the law. This is because if you also look at Section 228 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it gives the National Assembly the power to make laws in terms of the internal democratic practices and norms of the various political parties. So if the law is passed and the law is constitutional, we will definitely obey.
Huge concern for INEC, this particular bit that you mentioned, given the resources of personnel and money that is going to be deployed. Is it a challenge for INEC?
Well, it's definitely a challenge because when political parties are conducting direct primaries, and we've been specifically mandated to monitor those primaries under the various sections of the Constitution and the various sections of the Electoral Act, it is a challenge. This is because, yes, we have offices in all the local government areas of Nigeria. But for you to deploy, to go and monitor the primaries of political parties, the implication is that if you have 8,809 registration areas and political parties are supposed to organize their primaries in those areas, the implication is that you are going to go to monitor those primaries 18 times because each political party may likely organize its own primaries. So it's a huge challenge in terms of the personnel involved, and it's also a huge challenge in terms of the resources involved. But we are a constitutional body, we are a legal body. The moment the law is passed, we will find ways and means of complying with the provisions of the law.
Well, Mr. Okay, you know that whenever people hear ways and means, there are different kinds of interpretations to that. But let me also ask you, Honorable Barde, raised an issue the other time when he talked about security. In the event that there is a security challenge of any sort, and this concern remains, what then happens as far as INEC is concerned?
Well, primarily, as I've pointed out, it is left for the various political parties to make their own security arrangement in terms of securing both the venue and their party members that will be involved in the primaries. Our business is to go and monitor those primaries. Now, the question I have asked is, if we monitor the party primaries and then issue a report, what next? Section 285 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as well as Section 87 and Section 31 of the Electoral Act, makes it clear that it is the aspirants who were involved in the conduct of the party primaries or who were aspirants in the party primaries that have the locus, they have the virus to go to a court of law to go and challenge the outcome of the party primaries if they believe that either the guidelines were not properly followed or the Electoral Act was violated or that the person who was declared as having won the election was not the person who won the primaries. The Commission can only act as a witness in terms of such issues by tendering its report generated from the monitoring activities. But in the main, it is the business of the political parties to organize their primaries. And the Commission will not, on any account whatsoever, try to micromanage the political parties. No, it is within their internal realm, in their domestic realm, to organize their party primaries and make sure that it conforms to the provisions of the Constitution and also conforms to the provisions of the Electoral Act and also their own party guidelines.
All right, let's bring in Mr. Clement Wankwo, who since joined us. He's the Executive Director of PLAC. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program as well today. Well, yes, we know groups as yours did participate in a lot of advocacy to ensure that the right things are done concerning the Electoral Act and improving the elections. But if we could start off with that specifics about the Clause 87 that was talked about concerning primaries within political parties. Now we hear some parties, Honorable Barde just spoke about how the PDP thinks, no, we should have let that option of direct or indirect, because in the event that there is some security challenge, how then do you go about conducting direct primaries, which will involve large amounts of people queuing up behind their candidates in direct primaries? What is the thinking of agencies such as yours, or groups as yours, in this kind of matter?
Thank you, Chamberlain. I think it goes to the question, and Festus Okoye has already spoken a bit about it, the whole issue of internal democracy within the parties. I get the sense that within the National Assembly, there's a sense in which it is felt by members that they need to look ahead to the immediate future of the forthcoming elections, which is how do they ensure that members of the National Assembly, or even persons who are not necessarily in line with perhaps even party thinking, or even their governors, get nominated as candidates. The sense it is felt in is that if it was indirect primaries, then the delegate system is easy to purchase, in quotes. But the reality is that the National Assembly will not be the first time that they would be in this conundrum of constantly trying to look more at the immediate rather than ahead. There must be some sense in which what should aim to be achieved is internal democracy within the parties, where no particular power bloc seizes the party and ensures that those who are not in that bloc do not get to be elected. I totally agree that the whole issue of logistics around conducting direct primaries, the whole issue of cost becomes even more important, because when you speak with some of those who support the position taken, it's that it would be cheaper for those who are running elections to participate in the primaries when it is direct primaries. But the truth is that it will ultimately be more expensive. And, you know, a lot of us have seen this back and forth with different assemblies. And at the end of the day, you come back after elections and take from that experience and begin to go back again to the whole issue of electoral reform. So we'll see how it turns out. But the good news is that we are at a point now where we are looking at harmonization and then hopefully presidential assent. But there must be some experience and lessons taken from what has been passed by both houses, because as it is now, both houses have decided that you will have direct primaries, and I don't see that that will change. But the lessons from it, I think, will help inform looking forward. And we can take that. But basically, going forward, I think the most important thing is the whole issue of internal democracy. How do you ensure that everybody who is a member of a party is part of decisioning? How do you ensure that those who hold either executive or legislative power do not seize the party and ensure that only their chosen candidates emerge in elections? That's really what the issue is. And I think going forward, we will take the lessons from this and see how it plays out, and then what looks ahead.
One crucial issue in this matter, just as we talked about, which is internal democracy, is that of a political education of the people that will perform this voting. One of the things that's been the issue of a number of people is that of one of the things that one will find to be one of the things that one will find to be quite interesting in all of this, Mr. Nwankwo, is the fact that there is a need for political education among those that will vote at these primaries that we are considering. That crucial issue of political education for the people who will vote in the political parties is also there. There are those who are concerned about the fact that, you know, it's easier to influence those who will be performing the voting in any of these cases. Do you see political education within the parties, talking about internal democracy, being strong enough for this choice in the law?
Yes, political education for not just the members of the parties, but also for the leadership of the parties. As you know, the construct of leadership or construct of parties starts from the ward level. How do you educate officials of parties, even at ward levels, to understand that members from that ward have a right to participate in decisioning? How do you ensure that you do not have ward officials head members of the parties to a particular decision and enforce and impose it on them? So I think a whole lot of political education that members of parties at that level need to begin to ask questions, need to begin to see those they have elected as chairmen at wards and other officials, need to see them as serving them as their representatives and letting them know what it is that they want from that unit of local political party construct. So a whole lot of education needs to happen, and I think that the parties themselves have a failure in not even understanding how to educate their members. Where if you look at going towards elections, parties are leaving the whole issue of education as to how to vote even to sometimes INEC, sometimes civil society. So a whole lot needs to happen, and my sense is that we can only get past the fragile nature of internal party democracy if education, as you have rightly identified, is taken forward.
We also do know that, still with respect to internal democracy, direct primaries for political parties, we know that at a certain time, maybe 30 days before time, INEC usually will submit the list of voter register to political parties so that all of them have the same register. But what we see in some political parties is that even on the day of elections or a few days to the elections or voting or primaries, they're still coming up with people's registration. Different groups are registering different times. So is this something that INEC would like to see, INEC like to see political parties take up their own templates such that you don't have people who come up and complain that, wait a minute, how come you have different register, different groups, is not unified as INEC would have? If that were adopted by political parties or in something in that region, wouldn't that help strengthen the entire process and make the argument stronger for the more credible for direct primaries?
Well, if you go towards that particular direction, the implication and what we are suggesting is that the Independent National Electoral Commission should also be running the political parties. What the commission does is to compile a register of voters of Nigerians, all Nigerians who have attained the age of 18 and who are eligible to be registered, are registered, and we have a compilation of that. As you know, we went into the 2019 general election with a total registered voter population of over 84 million. Now, the different political parties have different strengths of membership. There are some who have membership in millions, and there are some who have their membership in thousands. So it varies. How political parties harvest their members is completely within their own internal mechanisms. How they keep the register of their voters is within their own internal mechanism. Some of them keep the register of their members manually. Some of them keep the register of their members electronically. So it is completely within their own perspective, within their own realm, to make the determination of this. What we request of them is that before they conduct their party primaries, that they should hand over a copy of their membership register to the commission, so that in the case of litigation, in case of challenges, and in case of problems, we will know who was entitled to vote and who was not entitled to vote. We were also doing the same thing in terms of the delegates who are supposed to vote. Now, one of the flip side of this is that before a political party is registered, the law requires that particular political party to submit a copy of its constitution to the Independent National Electoral Commission in terms of depositing it. Now, if there's any amendment to that particular constitutional framework which the political party used in registering, they must also deposit a copy of that amendment with the Independent National Electoral Commission. And so what has happened is that in going forward, if direct primaries is adopted, the political parties have to also go back and amend their own constitutional framework to conform the law. Because as of today, most of the political parties have direct primaries, they have indirect primaries, and sometimes they have consensus as part of their own mechanism, procedures, and regulations for conducting primaries. So I really believe that the political parties have to find a way out of these ones on how to keep a credible membership register, so that at the end of the day, everybody will know who is a member and who is not a member. But you know, the flip side of it is that sometimes you find one individual belonging to 5 political parties. So during party primaries, the individual goes to party A when they have their own primaries. And then during primaries of party B, the individual also goes to that particular primaries to go and vote. So political parties must find a way out of some of these challenges, so that we don't have a situation where the number of persons who vote in party primaries in a particular state will be more than the number of registered voters in that particular state.
Honorable Barde, what is your impression about this matter?
Honestly, this is a very, very critical issue that I've listened to Mr. Okoye, and honestly, there is a gap between what the voters know and what INEC wants voters to do. I can tell you authoritatively, I've been a member of a particular party up till this moment for over nearly 20 years. And the truth is that even the party constitution, you hardly even get it at the ward level. And let me say, I belong to one of the big parties, so to say. So if you cannot find the constitution of a party in the ward level, it means that even party members don't know what their constitution is. And that is a big challenge. And I think I want to implore INEC. We want a credible democracy or election. I think they need to come in here. Because I've had situations where you go for voting and the party member is asking you that, who are we voting for? What are the criteria for eligibility of the candidate that should be voted for? They don't know. So, and I think some of these political parties deliberately do this because they want to use the gap or the loophole to make sure that what they want is what is done. And it's this is one of the problems we have in internal democracy of the party, whereby you see people are elected or in the primaries, either through consensual, indirect, or direct primaries. At the end of the day, you see litigations flying up here and there because the leadership of the party itself has an interest, and it uses the excuse or the lack of knowledge of voters to make sure that things are not done rightly. And I think going forward, INEC should come in. Because if we allow these parties, as the way the parties are today in Nigeria, you agree with me that there are political parties that have been sponsored by individuals, and these individuals have their interests.
Well, Honorable,
factor.
There are many things that I want to ask you on this matter. Just a second. First of all, doesn't this speak to the lack of capacity on the part of the leaders of these political parties themselves? If they cannot govern themselves within their political party, why should Nigerians trust them to govern this nation?
What I'm saying here is this. It's all about internal democracy. You agree with me that there are some party members or leaders in some states and even in national level that are up and doing. But you will not deny the fact that there are members, leaders in the party who believe, whether rightly or wrongly, their views or what they want must be done in the party. It is, I want to look at it as it's a normal situation, but we should not allow such to happen. And what will make that not to happen is to have a strong internal democracy where I want to see INEC play a dominant role. Where INEC plays a dominant role in saying, look, this is your constitution. And the moment you're not going by it, we come in and there should be sanctions.
So how do you expect INEC to come in this matter, Honorable? What role do you expect INEC to play in the internal democracy of parties that you're proposing?
If you ask me today, I will tell you INEC is undermanned. Go to my state now, I go to my local government. How many staff of INEC do they have? So there is need for INEC to have more staff to monitor all these things that I'm saying. Because like Mr. Okoye said, if you go to where we are doing our elections, INEC will send a staff, at most, sometimes only two. Two staff will be here to monitor. And in a situation of direct primaries, can you really tell me they really able to monitor what's happening there? To make sure that the party conduct themselves according to the constitution of their parties? It's a big challenge. And honestly, for me, we need to make sure that INEC is staffed adequately so that all these things they can monitor very well. If it means even having staff of INEC that we work as part-time staff, when the elections come or primary comes, they come, do their work, they are disengaged. Because why I'm saying this, to reduce the financial burden on INEC and the state, Nigerian state as well.
So, Sami, Mr. Okoye just said now that, look, when it comes to the credible voter register of political parties, it's an internal party matter. Would you expect INEC to equally come in at that point, and what can the parties do to ensure that the voter register is credible?
Yeah, but you see, what I'm saying here in essence is that INEC is empowered by the law to monitor whatever the parties are doing. Now, it is this legibility given to INEC that will ensure that parties conduct themselves according to their constitution. And if there's nobody to do that, Chamberlain, I think there will be a lot of rancors in the party because of human factor, where people think they can lord it over others because they are leaders in the party or because they are holding political positions or elected positions. It happens, and you know it. And I think only INEC can be the umpire here to make sure that people conduct themselves in the way as prescribed by their constitution.
Isn't that a valid point that he's made?
Is that question directed to me?
Yes, please.
Now, yes, I agree that the Independent National Electoral Commission is both the umpire and the regulator of political parties. And constitutionally, we are also given the power and the mandate to look at the organization of some of these political parties. But in the main, how political parties mobilize their members, how they harvest those who become their members, is within their own domestic realm. Secondly, every political party has internal mechanisms of resolving challenges and also resolving conflicts. They also have appeal mechanisms of resolving some of their challenges. The moment the Independent National Electoral Commission begins to get involved in how parties recruit their membership, how they source the venue for their party primaries, how they source security to protect the environment for their parties, how they harvest the date on when to organize their party primaries, and so on and so forth. The commission becomes a participant in the internal organization of political parties, and I think that will be detrimental to the work the commission is doing and the work the commission is doing. Political parties, you see, the one thing we must realize is that you can exist as a political association in this country and exist constitutionally. But the moment you make up your mind, or the members of that particular political association make up their minds that they want to become political parties, the implication and what they are saying is that they have structures and they have grown up, and they are now ready to bid for political power. And in bidding for political power, they are ready to go out and mobilize membership of those who are ideologically believe in them, those who have an ideological bonding with them, and also those who see the principles they share. And so, to that particular extent, it is really the political parties that should go and do their business. The business of the Independent National Electoral Commission is to make sure that the law is not broken by the political parties, and also to make sure that in nominating their members, that the political parties conform to the law. And then we organize, undertake, and supervise elections to make sure that the Nigerian people have a say in what happens at the larger realm. But to go and begin to run the political parties, because that's what Honorable Barde is suggesting, that the commission should get involved in running the political parties, and then when they choose a venue and the commission does not like the venue they have chosen, we ask them move to a different venue, and then we look at their membership and ask them, why should this person be your member? Remove him from membership. The commission will not do that. We expect political parties to run professionally, efficiently, and competently, so that when they transmute to becoming the ruling party in government, they will also know how to run government. If we go and run the political parties and they come to power, with the Independent National Electoral Commission leave its constitutional mandate to go and run government with them? No, they ought to know how to run political parties in order to know how to run government.
Well, Mr. Wankwa, we'll come to you when we return from this break to tell us about the intendment and the spirit of the law. But now, we'd just like you to take a look at some of the clauses that were amended in the National Assembly. All right, so before we went to break, Honorable Barde did suggest that he thinks INEC need to perform a lot more responsibilities in terms of ensuring or strengthening internal democracy in political parties, saying that INEC is understaffed, undermanned in some areas, and they could need help. But INEC, Mr. Okoye, thinks, well, you know, if we were to do all of that, we might just be running the parties, and he doesn't see much of a sense in that one. So, Mr. Wankwa, what do you think of some of these matters?
Thank you. I think the political parties are saying to INEC, please, would like to see you help us achieve internal democracy within us. And if INEC is under the illusion that its attitude towards primaries before this particular bill and when it is passed into law, before this law, then I think that going forward, once this law is signed, INEC's responsibilities regarding enforcement or enforcing rules for internal democracy becomes even more important. Nobody's asking INEC to create criteria for people joining political parties or removing members from political parties, but the law is very clear in what is being proposed in this bill that political parties shall submit their register of members to INEC. The duty that imposes on the parties, and which if the parties don't comply with, INEC has the powers to determine next steps. And if the parties are not able to submit a register of members, then there cannot be a primaries. And I know that INEC would cite Section 31 that says they must accept candidates submitted by the parties. But there must be conditions precedent to submitting a list of candidates. And if those conditions are not met, and I think that's what INEC needs to begin to look at, creating guidelines to ensure that these parties understand that they are acting within their powers under the law in demanding the voters register, in demanding that party primaries be conducted in a particular way. And I think that where political parties do not comply with the provisions of the law, then INEC will be well within its powers to say we cannot accept a list of candidates submitted because you didn't comply with the law. INEC needs to understand now that with this law being passed, its responsibilities of monitoring the primaries of parties is a statutory responsibility. So I think that if INEC has not prepared for it, then its particular unit or department or directorate in charge of monitoring party primaries. INEC needs to strengthen that and build that up and give it the capacity. And I don't envy INEC because the law imposes on it now higher responsibilities of monitoring the primaries. And these primaries are not just with respect to one election as against the other. This is right down to state assembly elections. So I think that the burden on INEC is going to be far higher. INEC needs to prepare for it, and INEC needs to understand that Nigerians are saying, and I think the political parties are saying as well, we need you to help us enforce the law so that the intendment of the provisions regarding primaries, direct primaries in this case, are complied with by the political parties. The whole idea that parties can seize, or party leadership can seize machinery. And I want to go back to something that the National Commissioner of Festus had said earlier about candidates emerging by consensus, by direct primaries, by indirect primaries. There is nowhere in the law that allows for consensus candidates. Even if there's only one candidate, you must still go to primaries. So I think that INEC needs to understand as we prepare for the 2023 elections that there is nowhere in the law, and it will be illegal for any political party to talk about a consensus candidate. If there is only one candidate, and that is even stated in the Constitution, if there's only one candidate for an election, there are procedures for ensuring that that one candidate is duly elected, and it's the same with the primary. So INEC must completely eschew the fact, or eschew the notion that you can have candidates emerge from among aspirants in a consensus manner. That is not recognized under the law.
All right, let's talk about the electronic voting recommittal part of that amendment. So, Honorable Barde, now you say, yeah, they had to listen to the cry of the people to come up with this. What do you see political parties doing since this law is going to be now? Do you see them perhaps having a lot more consideration for the people regarding how their candidates emerge? Because at the end of the day, it's not just the interest of the parties or power blocks within the parties. They will be presented to the people ultimately, and so if they have to vote electronically, chances are that votes may just count much more than it has previously.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said earlier, let me applaud the Senate for passing that amendment. I mean, for rescinding on their earlier decision that election results should be transmitted electronically. For me, any lover of democracy, including the political parties, including people that are not partisan, should applaud the decision that election result and election itself should be done electronically. We have come of age. The world is moving forward. We cannot be doing the same thing or repeating what we were doing in the 80s today, where we have technology that will assist in making the process credible, in making people's mandate or people's vote count, so that nobody, the avenue that will be left for anybody to truncate the decision of the voters is minimized when you talk of the electronic transmission of result and electronic voting. So for me, anybody who truly is a Democrat, who really loves this country, should applaud the decision. I'm waiting for the conference committee because, of course, in the House of Rep, we rejected the electronic transmission of result. I will agree that I'm part of the decision, but personally speaking, I voted for the transmission electronically of the election result because I believe we have come of age, and if this proposal is submitted by INEC, it means they have checked and they have realized that they have the capacity to do electronic voting and transmit the election electronically, except otherwise where they have hiccups. So for me, I applaud INEC for bringing up that decision. And it's left for politicians to know, to decide. Politicians like us, who are elected to represent the people, to decide whether we want this system, which we have now, amended to ensure that people's vote count. For me, it is very, very important, and I pray that in the conference committee, the electronic transmission of result will be adopted, and Mr. President will assent to it. And I think that is the best gift President Buhari will give to Nigerians at the end of his tenure.
But, Honorable, just a very, very quick one. The concerns, one of the concerns your colleagues had was that some of their constituents in the extremely rural areas might be disenfranchised. Do you think that a concern has been addressed?
Yes, but that is why in the clause we said INEC will decide. INEC will decide. So, and when we spoke with the leadership of INEC, they believe that nearly 80% of the voting areas or polling units can make election result be transmitted electronically. So of course, if we have 87% of the entire voting unit and we just have 13 or 15 polling unit that cannot be done, we have given the mandate by the provision of the clause which we amended that INEC can decide otherwise. It didn't say shall. It didn't say shall. If it says shall, it means you have handcuffed INEC in such a way that if they cannot do it electronically, there is no other means. But the clause there give them a leeway that where elections cannot be transmitted electronically, they can apply, any other means to make sure that the people's vote counts. I think it's very, very important. So we are not, it is not like it must be, no, but we are giving INEC the leeway to determine. And INEC said, yes, where possible, they can vote and transmit result electronically. So who should cry, why should politicians cry that, oh no, we don't want elections result to be transmitted electronically? For me, anybody saying that has a dubious intentions to make sure that people's vote don't count.
Well, we need to be sure these buttons are working these days. Well, nobody, that then suggests that it might not have been the main reason why they didn't vote for that, because INEC had always said that they could do that. But, well, let's take this to INEC right away. So, Mr. Koye, how is INEC taking this on board? I know that some of the questions had been, all right, so if INEC had always said that they were ready, at what point will some of those decisions be made? So give us some perspectives on that.
Well, just permit me to just clarify just one of the issues raised by my colleague Clem Wankwo. The issue about whether INEC has capacity and whether INEC is willing to regulate political parties and their party primaries revolves around our own interpretation of the provisions of Section 285 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If a political party has conducted party primaries and there are problems, the question you should ask is, who is the person who is aggrieved with the conduct of the said primaries? Section 285 of the Constitution says that it is the aspirants and the parties that are aggrieved, and the Constitution is the fundamental law of the land. It is the ground norm, and the Electoral Act is subject to the ground norm. So if the Constitution has given aspirants who are aggrieved and political parties that are aggrieved the locus to challenge the conduct of party primaries, I think it will be out of place for the Independent National Electoral Commission to insist that it is the person who, aggrieved or the agency aggrieved when the Constitution has clearly and specifically and fundamentally identified the aggrieved party and the aggrieved individuals in this particular respect. So I think I needed to make that very clear. Now, in relation to the issue of what transpired in the National Assembly yesterday, now I think that it is important, and I think that what the National Assembly has done is to clearly define their place as the tribune of the people, and as an assembly that has a listening ear. They have also shown that ultimately that sovereignty resides with the people, and that elected representatives must listen to the people and also act based on the wishes and the concerns of the people. The people raised concerns relating to what the Senate passed, and the Senate has gone back to take a second look at what they have passed. What the Commission did in relation to this particular matter was that since we were not invited to come and give our own perspective, we joined the debate, and we also produced our own document showing what we have done in the past, what we intend to do now, and what we are capable of doing in the future. Now, I have also taken a second look at what was passed yesterday. I think it's quite progressive, but there are still gaps. There are still very serious and fundamental issues that the Conference Committee needs to take a second look at. One, our collation process is still very, very manual. And this collation process is adumbrated in Section 63 of the Electoral Act. It's still very, very manual. Now, if you look at the wordings of Clause 52, which talks about electronic transmission of results, and then you look at the wordings of Clause 63 sub 5, it talks about transfer of results. Now, we must find a nexus between the provisions of Section 63 of the Electoral Act that makes the collation of results manual, that makes it the dominant procedure for the collation of results, and then the trajectory between that and the electronic transmission of results. This is because at the end of the day, Section 63 still makes it mandatory for a presiding officer who, after sorting out the votes and counting the votes, to transfer those votes into a form prescribed by the Independent National Electoral Commission, and thereafter the presiding officer signs the form and also stamps the form and also gets the party agents to also countersign, and then the presiding officer gives a copy to the party agents and to the security officials if they are there. And then these things are taken under security cover to the next level of collation, which is the registration area collation center, where the collation officer also does the same thing. And it is the results as collated, the figures as collated, that is transferred to the place where declarations are made and returns and results are declared. And these things are also manual. So we must find a nexus between the manually collated results and also the electronically transmitted results, because ultimately, at the end of the day, if a matter goes to court, the question that will be asked is, what are the provisions of the law in terms of collation? And the courts have interpreted some of the forms to mean that these are the forms signed by the presiding officers, signed by the collation officers, and also signed the result sheets signed by the returning officers in terms of from EC8A, EC8B, EC8C, and EC8E. So I think that the conference committee needs to take a second look at what has been passed by both houses and then try to harmonize them and make it in such a way that we don't have challenges. But as I say, what is before us is still incoherent. It is when we have the final copy that the commission will sit down, look at it, and find the pathway to the realization of the intendment of the law and also the intendment of the National Assembly.
All right, so Mr. Nwankwo, that suggests that the job is not done.
No, it's not done, but Festus is certainly part of working to making sure that it's we do get a final draft. I think one of the very commendable things that the National Assembly did was to set up a multi-level technical team, and Festus has been part of those conversations. So I am sure that as we move towards harmonization, that the view that Festus is canvassing here would be something that the members of the harmonization team would be happy to listen to. But certainly, I think what is very, very commendable is that the Senate did, and I'm going to join Honorable Barde here in commending the Senate for the work that it has done, going back and looking at what it had done. Certainly the House of Representatives did pass the provisions regarding transmission, and I am sure that as you look ahead towards finalization of this, that all of these views would be taken into account. But I must say that with respect to transmission, the argument about people being disenfranchised is neither here nor there. Transmission really has nothing to do with the voter, other than that it ensures that what they have voted for is what reflects in the final count. So for a voter who may not be literate, the word transmission has no meaning to him, because he casts his vote. Under the Electoral Act, then, if there is transmission of results by electronic means, that has nothing to do with the voter. It now rests on the Independent National Electoral Commission, and it's going to be up to the Commission to ensure that it complies with the law with respect to this. And I think that as we go into the elections, yes, INEC has been given all of these powers, and I must say that INEC has gone way, way ahead even of some of these conversations in terms of its logistics and preparations and knowledge. But there is a whole lot of responsibility on citizens, on civil society, to ensure that as INEC continues its move towards reducing the human elements in elections, that we must keep an eye on INEC as well to ensure that INEC delivers on the promises of better use of technology and the better results that this will achieve. So yes, INEC may be happy, and we are all happy with the way that the law has now been crafted, and I think that once the harmonization completes and all of this is captured, that we then have a responsibility of supporting INEC to continue the trajectory of effective and greater use of technology for elections that reduces the human element and the possibility of human interference.
All right, then, Mr. Clement Nwankwo, Honorable Yakubu Barde, and Mr. Festus Okoye. Gentlemen, thank you all for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, then. So we'll move on to the next item.
Yeah, but we need to take a quick message. The next conversation is really about this same thing, but only at a higher level. Stick with us, we'll be right back.
Potential of the youth of Nigeria. Today, over 75% of the population is under the age of 35. More decisive actions are needed to turn this demographic asset into an economic dividend. A young, productive, youthful population with access to education, skills, social protection, affordable housing, and medical care will power Nigeria's economy now and well into the future. We must move away from the so-called youth empowerment programs. The youth do not need handouts. They need investments. I would therefore like to commend you, Mr. President, for your decision to establish the Youth Investment Fund. That is why also the African Development Bank is currently working with central banks and countries all across the continent to design and support the establishment of what we call Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks. These will be new financial institutions run by young, professional, and highly competent financial experts and bankers to to develop and deploy new financial products and services for businesses and ventures of young people. Several African countries have already indicated their readiness to establish youth entrepreneurship investment banks. Here is the lesson. Nigeria should make its youth the drivers of the new economy through the creation of youth entrepreneurship investment banks that puts new financial ecosystems around them to fully unleash their potential. This will take the Youth Investment Fund, which you have established, Mr. President. It will take it to scale, it will institutionalize it, and it will make it sustainable.
Thanks for staying with us. Three gentlemen join us this morning to address the youth addressing Nigeria. First of all, we have with us in the studio here Abimbola Oyarino, who is a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We also have with us in our Abuja studio co-founder Connected Development, that's Code, Hamzat Lawal, joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Lawal.
Thank you for having me. I'm the
as
founder.
well,
Thank you.
yes please, as well as Victor Anilajo, who is a politician and tech entrepreneur. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Victor.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. So, yeah, well, let's start with you, Mr. Oyarino. The calls for
Dr. Oyarino, apologies.
Dr. Oyarino, yeah. I didn't see the stethoscope, maybe that's why. My apologies. The call has been loud, and it's been a long time coming. The youths are the leaders of tomorrow. It's something I've been hearing since I was very small, and it would seem like it's a long time coming. The clamor is loud now. Yeah. People want youths to lead, to come into the fray, but it would seem like the youths are very reluctant to join politics. How then is that going to happen?
Well, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I think I know some of the things that can bring us out of this doldrum that we find ourselves. Because I've taken time to actually study. As a young man, I wanted to change my country. I wanted to have a country I'm proud of. But growing up, the reality is different from what you have on paper. You just know that there's no inroad, there's no access, except you have someone who wants to, drag you to that position. And
inroad or access into what?
Into politics. It's not. It has been hijacked. Let me put it that way. It has been hijacked, and the accessibility for young, qualified Nigerians is not there. You see a lot of. I mean, it is attracting a number of youths, but what kind of youth? It's those with high nuisance value, who can actually do the things that I cannot do. Those are the people who have the access. And that is the problem. Because growing up, I envisioned everything that I have done, everything that I have studied. In fact, my PhD thesis was also directed in understanding some of the challenges that we face and how, change can be done. But the question is, will there be access?
When you say access, what exactly do you mean? Is that the roads are short, or in what ways?
You see, I'm a structural realist, and I believe that structure determines everything. We tend to overemphasize the place of the human intellect. But without the requisite structure, the human brain is more or less less functional, let me put it that way. What do I mean by structure? You see, the kind of money I need to get into Nigerian politics, I might not have it till I turn 60. These are the realities. The kind of platform I need. You know, because growing up, you have been told to keep quiet, your opinion doesn't count. It stems from the family structure. You understand that sociologists have actually argued that the family is the primary socializer. And from the family, you have a family system, a family culture that tells you that as a young person, you don't have an opinion. It is what the elderly person tells you. That's valid. So this is where the formation of the idea of suppression of the youth comes from. Then we now transmit it to the society. We have timid people. I have a friend who mentioned that there's something about people who go to the UK and they come back, they become very emboldened. They can speak their mind. I said, this is culture. Culture can actually change things. So we have to go down to the roots and actually to tackle this problem, really.
Well, let me take this to you, Mr. Lawal. There are those who have also argued that most of the people who fought for Nigeria's independence were between ages 27 and, say, 35 tops. And here we are, you know, Mr. Yarino, Dr. Yarino is saying we have a challenge of access for youths in politics. What's your take?
Well, nobody would give you access to politics. Politics is not a tea party. Nobody would hand you over power, even if you're young, old, if you're a woman or a person with disability. You have to take it, you know, democratically. So, but then again, you don't need money to join politics. You only need money to run for office through the political process. I agree with my brother, but I think that time are changing. Time are changing because when you look at young people and active participation, yes, young people are leading in every sector. So when you go to agriculture, when you go to civic technology, when you go to innovation, look at what young people are doing in Yaba. When you come to businesses, the financial sector, Fintechnology, when you come to civic space, young people are leading. But in politics, you hardly find young people who are not only leading, but sitting on that political policy and decision making. And the solution is simple. The problem itself is a political problem. And the solution must start politically. But then again, I think 2023 provides a unique opportunity. Before 2019, I had said on channels that we as young people cannot provide a youth president in 2019. And I had said at that time that the best way for us to get the system, penetrate the system, and consolidate our actions as young people is after 2019 elections, we should start playing partisan and active politics. But then 2023 could give us an edge where, again, mind you, politics has to do with negotiation and a lot of diplomacy. But power only listens to power. So as imagine young leaders and imagine politicians, how can we consolidate? Because there are pockets of voices, there are pockets of conversations and meetings happening. But how can we as young people consolidate all of this conversation and action and then use our numbers? Because numbers in politics is power. It translates into power. How can we use these numbers to now negotiate? Because if we don't get it right ahead 2023, then 2027 will become more difficult. Because for me, 2027 is a turning point. Because in 2023, what we can actually do is negotiate and at least get a few percentage across board. So is it ministerial slot? Is it heads of MDAs? You know, because these are positions that we must ensure that young people, and I think I need to pause and even circle back a bit. So we have youth and we have young people. Youth, and when I say youth, I'm talking about people below 35 years. Young people above 35 to 55. Mind you, the demography above 35 to 55 are the forgotten generation. My own generation below 35 are the generation that are striving to penetrate and break that jinx. And I say they're forgotten because our generation and the generation above 35 to 55 are a generation of broken promises. What do I mean? Yes, they keep saying we're the future leaders, we're the future of Nigeria. But no one invested in us. No one deliberately invested in young people. And this is not about empowerment because, you know, like Adeshina has said, empowerment is giving out handouts. How are you investing in younger politicians and younger leaders? And how are you also ensuring that we have generational equity and generational dialogue? I think what is happening now in politics is the fact that the older politicians who are really smart and seasoned, because the only thing they've done all through their lives is playing politics, so they don't have skill, they don't have experience outside of politics, and you can't do away with them. What we need is to ensure that these older politicians who are polished can actually look at younger people and younger politicians and transfer this knowledge and also learn from us, because we are the technology-driven generation. And I believe if we have intergenerational equity and dialogue, then we can start dealing with, is it gender inclusiveness and people with disability. But I believe that, again, my generation, my constituents can become that changing tide ahead 2023. And ultimately in 2027, I believe that probably Nigeria would have one of the youngest presidents in 2027. But most importantly, we must actively participate, because again, politics decides everything. Politics decides if you would even lose your license as channels television. Politics decides if you get a job as a young person. And when you get a job, how much you're being paid, how much tax is being deducted, and if you get health care or you get even a quality lifestyle. So politics is everything in Nigeria, sadly. With our generation, what would bring into politics is the fact that we'll transition politics into public policy and service delivery. And this is one thing the older politicians are not getting right.
Politics also determines whether or not a fintech profits or not. Well, let me ask Mr. Victor Anilaju, you have been in the fray. You contested the presidency in 2019, and I understand you're still throwing your hat into the ring for the next one. What's been your experience as a young person in politics?
So, thank you for having me. First of all, like you asked about my experience has been wonderful. My experience so far with especially the young Nigerians that make up 80% of Nigeria population, which is about 150 million young people. Right? When I mean young people, I mean from the age of 16 to about 55, right? So these persons has been in support of me, in cheering me up to see that whatever vision I have, the health vision I have for Nigeria will bring into pass. Now, the challenge is before now, I use the word before now, is because we still have a lot of old, greedy politicians who have disrupted the Nigerian governmental structure to favor them. But at this time, as we speak, I think now the young Nigerians, we are now more intelligent, we are now more determined, we are now more focused on getting our nation back to our hands. Like I always say, if anything goes wrong with Nigeria today, it will affect us, the younger generation, more. The older generation, they have lived their life. So if even if Nigeria wake up today, they're careless. If people are suffering in Nigeria, they're careless because they are living flamboyant life. A lot of them stays abroad. So I'm really talking to the people, the young Nigerians. We make up 80% of the population of Nigeria today. And if we feel that the government is not working for us, I mean, it's not working. A country should work for majority of her population. And if the younger generation happens to make up 80% of that population and is not working for us, we heard the president said during his independence speech that they're empowering 1 million youth on Empower. 1 million. Can you compare 1 million to 150 million people? And how much does Empower give to you? Empower gives you 40,000 naira. But you know what? We are tired of all of this empowerment. We don't need empowerment. We need our nation back to us. The young Nigerians can lead this country to a greater height. We have the ability, we have the skill, we have the intellect, we have the numbers, right? Don't let anybody deceive you and telling you that the young people, they are not ready. That's a lie. And you always hear that from the mouth of the old greedy politicians. They know that they are ready. They know that when we come into power, Nigeria will change. The resources will go around the entire nation. So that's why they are preventing us from coming into power. They know that when we come into power, those excesses of money that they always have, we will not have it, right? You can't lead a country of over 80%, which is about 150 million young people, with people in their 80s, in their 70s. No, now. The inspiration is not there. The president might have good ideas, might have good intention, but you cannot relate to young people using elderly people.
Yeah,
it's even in universities these days. Most of the professors.
Pardon me, let's see how we can go around. Time flies when you're looking at this kind of matters. And if we could take a little further on that point that he's making about empowering young people, not just these youth empowerment programs, which are not seen to be achieving or making the desired impact. We also did hear Dr. Adesina talk about youths don't need handouts, they need investment. What is the thinking in terms of how this is being approached? And if he talks about investment, what do you see? How should that be approached?
Well, basically, I would still emphasize the place of structure. We have a lot of young people who are actually very knowledgeable and, creating their own space in spite of the structure, not giving them that platform to thrive. You would know that a lot of Nigerians are doing well in the tech space. A lot of Nigerians are, distinguishing themselves in the international community. And the question is, why do they thrive when they go outside Nigeria and they don't thrive when they are in Nigeria? It boils down to the structure and how, the structure gives them room to operate. So going forward, the place of empowerment, I can understand that it's overplayed because there are different empowerment schemes that have come up from government to government, and to what extent has that affected the youth positively. The time for handout is over because we don't even have the funds to start giving handouts. And but there are long-term plans, there are short-term plans, and there are immediate palliatives. What we see often are immediate palliatives. And I just want to draw attention to what has happened recently and where palliative has actually worked to actually save us from what would have been a Venezuelan case, where the government intervened in the economy to ameliorate the COVID-19 situation. To a large extent, that has worked in blocking some of the, for example, the recession. We are out of it. That has worked. And this palliative should be short-term agenda. It should not be something that is recurring. It should be a response to events like the COVID-19 that wasn't expected, So I believe that we should now have a focus on long-term investment in youth-related issues. For example...
Just 1 second on that, because as Chemilin said, we don't really have much time. So reference what Lawal said Hamza Lawal said the other time, when he said that the young people, power is not given, it is taken. If you agree, what should be the plan for young people to use their numbers? He also said the numbers is a power negotiation tool. So is there a way that you think young people can actually come together and galvanize that strength?
Yeah, I will hinge my argument on two theories. And that is the Marxist perspective to change and the functionalist perspective. The Marxist perspective is what we saw play out during the NSAS. But is that what we want? That is a question we might want to answer. Revolutionary change. Another thing will be the functional change. We'll evolve into power. And that takes time. I don't see the youth coming to power in 2027, like my colleague said, if situations still remains the same as it is presently. We need to understand our power first, that we do have a power, and power is in numbers. But then you go back to the structure. Okay. Do you have the youth from the north speaking the same language with the youth from the south? These are the issues.
That speaks to whether or not the youths can or are organized. Can organize themselves or are organized themselves to do what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, all right. Sorry, pardon me. Well, Hamza, in addition to that, I know you may want to respond to that, but I'd like to get your thinking in terms of when it said that, look, these handouts don't work, you need investments in youth. I mean, being someone in that space, entrepreneurial space, what will your thinking be?
I run a homegrown Nigeria initiative called Follow the Money. And today you have Follow the Money in 9 countries. And there's growing interest in Canada, in US, in Europe, and Southeast Asia. Why is that so? Today the world is led by ideas. Money plays small role. What's important is the vision, you know? Do you have a vision? Do you have an idea that is revolutionary and that can change things and turn things around? What I see are opportunities, not problems. Because if you see problems, then we would continue to dwell in the past. But when we see opportunities to engage, when we see opportunities to change things and leverage on technology and build consensus and invest in building alliances, see, young people are organizing. Young people are also transferring knowledge. If we're not organizing, Mr. President would not sign the Not Too Young to Run Act. Mind you, because a lot of people have collective amnesia. Mr. President did not sign it because he likes young people or he likes our face. No. He signed it because we gave him an ultimatum and there was pressure on Mr. President. The same pressure we organized and put on National Assembly and put on the State Assembly and got the Constitution to be amended. So we're organizing. We are engaging. But I think that we need to mobilize more and engage at the grassroots level. See, Chamberlain, this English we're speaking is not the language that the people at the grassroots understand. I've just returned back from the Northeast, engaging young leaders on the ground, speaking their language and telling them a vision of the kind of Nigeria that we all see. And see, the young people in the South and the East, the North, the West, the Middle Belt are speaking in the same language. Maybe they're communicating differently, but if you look deeper, they're saying the same things. They're saying that we have been marginalized over time and power must be given to us. And my brother mentioned the answers. Let's not mistake that people in government that are devilish infiltrated and mobilized thugs and paid them. Again, that's why you say handout. You know, you gave young people who are heavy on drugs handouts to go and attack other young people who are mobilizing, organizing, and protesting against police brutality. So that's what happened. Let's not change history. So again, let's go back to politics. You see,
just a quick one. There are some issues that you have raised.
It's not about leading campaigns and collecting PVC.
Just a second. You raised some very, very crucial issues about interfacing with young people in the Northeast and all over the place in the country. There is another argument that's been on, and I don't know how you would take that on board in this conversation, especially since you follow the money, so to speak. It's the issue of weaponizing poverty against the youth. How is that going to be addressed? Because if young people don't have money, they don't have opportunities to make money, the first person that comes with any offer of sorts is likely to be the one that they will follow. So how do we navigate that and still get the vital issues to reach these young people for the Nigeria of their dreams?
Oh, we're already reaching these young people. See, sadly, money bags, political money bags have made so much wealth and money, engaging the system, and that's why we have a lot of abandoned projects across Nigeria. How do we engage? We're already engaging, and we're telling young people that, see, you cannot sell your present and your future if you continue to collect money. Yes, this money will be thrown at you if you don't have personal conviction. You would take this money, and even this money could cause crisis amongst, youth group. But we have, we have a collective of young people. We have what we call the Future Collective. And a lot of young people across board have been having consultation and have been having dialogue. We've been reaching out to other young people at the hinterlands, in the grassroots, trying to educate them. See, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be leading a campaign in motor parks, in public spaces like the market. You know, we cannot sit in our comfortable zone in Abuja and we think that things will turn and things will change for good. No, we must engage those people you call Agbero, those people you say they're uneducated. We must engage them. We must sit with them, eat amala, eat tuwo, and transfer knowledge into them and make them understand that, see, if you want a better Nigeria during election, do not take up arms. And if those politicians come at you and give you money to take arms, ask them where are their kids.
Okay.
I wanted to say that, see, in 2023, it's not about collecting your permanent voter's card. What is important is going out to vote. Imagine if we have over 80% voter turnout. That is already winning election as young people. Because if you have your permanent voter's card and you're just taking selfie with it, but on election day you don't go and queue up and cast your ballot, then how would you protect your vote? And how would Yaga, for instance, help us to watch our vote? So it's important that beyond collecting your PVC, is to go out on election day, cast your vote.
The conversation has to be endless, Mr. Lowell, but let me quickly take this on to Mr. Anilaju just before we wrap it all up. Now, this is where we are now, and your experience you have described as something that has been eye-opening. But then the issues are there that both Dr. Yarino and Mr. Lowell have raised, and that is engaging the youth and mobilizing them. It's one thing to engage, it's another thing for them to be mobilized. Now, what are the challenges you see for young people, and what would be your recommendations to solving them?
Okay, so basically our biggest challenge now is the old incompetent politicians. They are our biggest problem, both politically, economically, and otherwise. They are our biggest problem. In fact, they are causing more damage to our future than good. But you see, the eyes of the young Nigerians are now open. They now know the problem of our generation, that these old incompetent politicians, they are not interested in the young generation. And that is why our economy is going down. But to solve this problem, we have started a national voters campaign, which is ongoing right now as we speak. There are a lot of young Nigerians that are already registering to get their voters card online. And like myself, I've declared to run for the seat of the president. And we are going to have a lot of young people contesting the seat of the presidency and also the Senate House and the House of Representatives. In fact, we are mobilizing a team of young aspirant candidates.
Yeah, it's an endless conversation until we get young people to be as active as they ought to be in the scheme of things, because ultimately the future is theirs. For now, my apologies, we really have run out of time. We have to let you go now.
Yes.
Victor Anilaju is a politician, presidential aspirant, as you've heard, and he's also a tech entrepreneur, as well as Hamzat Lawa, who is co-founder Connected Development, it's Code, joined us from our Abuja studio, as well as Abimbola Oyarino, Dr. Abimbola Oyarino, public affairs analyst. He joins us here in Lagos. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, it's clearly a conversation that we will hold in the days ahead and keep holding.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't neglect your future and expect things to go good for you. Well, let's quickly take some messages coming through from you now. This one is coming from Prince about Electoral Amendment Bill. He says, any politician who opposes direct primaries on whatever ground needs to let us know what their reasons are. They should also let us know if they would accept indirect general elections from INEC for those reasons.
Okay, Paul Agbolade said, in my view, adoption of direct primary for political parties is the starting point of the long agitated restoration of local government autonomy. With direct primary, local government elections will become free and fair. Imposition of candidates by so-called godfathers will be significantly minimized. Also will ensure witness developmental activities we will surely witness development at the local government level going forward. The benefits of direct primary will surely outweigh the costs at the long run.
Well, Kukawa says, this is a fantastic development that will improve party democracy. It's an opportunity for parties to begin to think online voting thereby eliminating the challenges of security and cost. It could be a springboard for electronic voting in Nigeria. Kudos to National Assembly.
Jumei says, why will any political party be afraid of direct primaries? The issue of insecurity during primaries is a lame excuse. They know that some will never come close to nomination if party members are to determine who contests election. Party faithful are tired of imposition. INEC should look forward. Really?
Well, you got Isimi Kaye says, personally, I see nothing wrong with this country other than leadership. We don't have business with any of these agitations if our resources are managed for youths and national development.
Let me jump very quickly to youth leadership in the conversation. That's Comrade Enu Jeko says, access is not given to young people because the young persons of this generation has been robbed of the building block of political confidence, which is mentorship. Therefore, the current young generation, we must become the foundation for the next generation by we joining politics and getting the street experience that will put our children, the next generation, into political position without a price. That is what we must do.
Well, there you go. So that is it today. Hey, keep your comments coming through. We appreciate all of them. Thank you for watching as well. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day and keep safe.